and welcome back to my Goblin 700 competition building series. It's been quite a lot of time since my last video, since part 3. I'm sorry that it took a bit longer, but I wanted to finish the electronic devices before I can show you now the hints and tricks. And I was in Easter holidays, so yeah, it took me a bit longer. But in this video, in part 4, we will look together at the electronic devices. So I already installed everything, I already took the maiden flight. So I can give you now some hints and tricks about the electronic devices, how to install them, how to mount them, how to set up. And yeah, so let's start with that. And in the next video you will get the setup and all the weights. So have fun! So I will start right off from the tail. Well, all that regards the tail is, the first thing is you want to be sure that all this stuff here around the tail is really running smoothly. So already when you assemble it, be sure that this runs effortless. So it has to run really smooth, because everything which is not running smooth you will later have as vibrations, or you will hear the tail. So you can also give some dry fluid or special shaft oil onto this and just do like this a bit, move it so it can run in more easily and it runs smoother. The next thing is here this carbon fiber part. Be sure to glue or to epoxy this stuff here really good, because you don't want to break it. This is also for here, and then again here for this part. So the next part is this little plastic part here, which holds this carbon fiber. For me it was really hard to get those screws through it, so I just took out this plastic part and the 2 screws, and I just screwed them into the plastic part without the tail boom. So you already have a pre-drilled hole, so to say, and then when you put this inside and put the screws inside, it's really much easier to screw it. The next thing is the tail servo. So the problem here is that if you look from above, you will see that this part here, it's not flat, it's a bit inclined, it's like a curve. So I would recommend you, if your servo comes with some rubber grommets, like this here, you can see it here. If it has some rubber grommets, I would recommend you to put them in, because if you don't do that, you will have some kind of force on the servo, because it has to be on that curve, and this is some strength which comes onto it. So just put the grommets inside and then mount it here directly onto the tail boom. So when we are talking about this servo and tail stuff, the next thing I want to show you is, if you take a look inside of the tail boom, you will see that the servo wire from the tail servo runs a short part inside the boom. So here you have to be sure that the servo wire cannot touch the tail belt, and I fixed it with a zip tie and a bit of glue onto this bolt, as you can see here. The next thing is, you want to connect, or you want to use a connector, a servo wire connector, between the tail servo and the flyballer system, because in case of a crash it can disconnect, and it also is very handy if you want to transport the Goblin inside a suitcase or luggage for an event. So you can easily put off the tail and you just put the servo wire inside the connector. So as you can see, I put the ESC directly where it's recommended. It's right below the battery tray. So I use the Contronic Jive Pro 120. I used the zip tie to keep it in place, also a double-sided tape. And when you have a look from the lower side, here you see the zip tie, and then if you may wonder what this blue wire is, this is my Contronic Tell Me. It's especially made for the Hot series, so I can directly get all the data from my ESC onto my transmitter, and via telemetry I can directly see how much voltage I have, how much capacity I took out, what my maximum amp peaks are, and I also can put some alarms if I want to. So this is my goal. I want to have a capacity warning. So you have here this wire directly from the ESC, and also the Tell Me is doing then a wire like this. All these wires then go inside of the mainframe, and then they go up onto this plate, and you can see that they then go through a hole, and then they come out directly at the flybarless system where they are connected. So the Graupner Tell Me, the Contronic Tell Me is directly going into the telemetry plug from my flybarless system and transmitter, and the ESC is going directly to channel 6 of my Graupner receiver. For the servos, you already have inside the manual some recommended wiring. So it's nearly with every Goblin it's done the same. So you have from this, you have directly the wire here. And then you have from the front servo, you just put the wire below the next servo, and they all then come out here. And they also go directly into the flybarless system. So all in all, you then have a really tidy looking helicopter, and this is a part I especially really like of the Goblins, so you don't have this cable chaos at the end. So the next thing is regarding the belts. I would recommend you, if you start to build your electronics in, so before you mount the tail and all the stuff, be sure to first mount the motor, because you have to mount the motor with the motor belt, and as you can see, if you have already mounted the tail belt, you cannot get this off or on. So be sure that you mount your preferred motor pinion and motor and stuff, and then at the end you just do this part. The motor belt has to be very tight, and this also. This is the belt tensioner. I wasn't sure how to use it because I never had a helicopter with a belt tensioner before, but in optimum case it has to be lined up with the main chassis. And at the beginning mine was really loose, it was just hanging out and not really pushing onto the onto the belt. So the secret, which I didn't know, and maybe I was too stupid to see that from the manual, but you can rotate this. So just rotate it, that it goes a bit stronger, and then it will push automatically on the belt. Please be sure that this is not meant to do all of your belt tensioning. The first thing you want to do is when you have mounted the helicopter and you have screwed this inside and also the two nylon nuts, and you have the belt here and it all is running correctly, then you just take the 4 screws at the tail out and you just push everything backwards until the tail here is really stiff, and then you screw the screws back inside in. The next thing is a bit Goblin special. It's about the servos. So as you can see, they all sit around the swash plate like in a circle. So it's easy to mount the servos themselves because you have here these screws. So you just put the screws from here and you can easily reach them. But the problem is that you cannot reach these servo horn screws when you have already mounted the rest of the servo. So as you can see, I cannot reach this screw here. So what I did, I just connected all the servos with my flybarless system before I mounted them inside the helicopter. Then I've gone into the servo mid setup part of my flybarless system to set them all in the middle. Then I put the servo horns on it as much in the center as I could, and then I mounted them. So later on, when I had everything mounted and connected, I just had to trim it a bit till it was in the middle, but I was sure that they would not stand like this or like this. And the next hint is also regarding the servos. If you have a close look inside the manual, you will see that this, and this screw here have the same length. They are a bit longer, and one of the screws, especially this one on the top left, it's a bit shorter. This is because they want to be sure that this screw doesn't run into this bearing and damage it. But the problem I encountered when I mounted my servos, I used also here the rubber grommets. But with using the rubber grommets and also this carbon plate, I didn't have enough screw length to fix it. So this one was loosened and hanging out. So I was buying some screws which had 2 millimeters more length than the original ones. I guess these were 8 millimeters length and these were 12 millimeters. So I bought a bag of screws which are 10 millimeters, and now it fits really perfectly. So what you can see is that when the helicopter stands on its landing skid, the helicopter or the main rotor head itself, it's a bit inclined. You can see it here with the picture. This is horizontal, so you can see that the helicopter itself, it's a bit inclined to the front. So if you have problems with adjusting the correct zero pitch or minimum maximum pitch, just take your digital pitch gauge and put it, for example, here on the motor, which has the same horizontal line as the main rotor head. Just put it here and do the zero adjusting here, and then you can put it onto the blade, so you can be sure that this zero is the same zero as here. So this was part 4 about the electronic devices stuff of my Goblin 700. I just wanted to give you a short overview about some stuff and some things I encountered and some hints. So if you have special questions about it, feel free to write them down in the commentaries and I will try to answer them as soon as possible. If you are interested in the whole setup about the whole electronic devices, feel free to visit my website, where you have for each model a own page and a own setup page. I will also publish my flybarless settings there if you're interested and if you're also using a Graupner flybarless system. So yeah, that was it, and now stay tuned for part 5, which will be the last part, and we will deal about the weight. So I will show you all the weights of all the electronic devices, the helicopter itself, and I will show you which weight we get at the end. So I hope you come and watch again the next video, so stay tuned. Bye bye.